All right. If TCU fans didn't already have reason to remember the Alamo, they have reason to remember the Alamo doubly now. Just a couple seasons after finishing off that historic comeback against Oregon, 31-0 down in that one. They come back from 21-3 down against Stanford to knock off the Cardinal in dramatic fashion in a just entertaining football game, 39-37. We anticipated a really good one, and we got it. We bring in Don King from Last Word on College Football to help us sort through this one. Don,
Hey, Mark.
I hate to meet up like this in the aftermath of these difficult Stanford losses, but it's now two straight.
Yeah, both good games. Both turned on a couple of key plays. Both saw some critical injuries, particularly down the stretch. Stanford missing Justin Reed for the entire second half was devastating. Um, Other than Harrison Phillips, he's by far the most critical defender on Stanford's team, and his absence showed in a huge way in that second half. And TCU kind of had its way, able to get up and down the field. So kudos to TCU's coaches for great offensive adjustments, and kudos particularly Kenny Hill for getting his head settled down and getting into the game. Because candidly, he did everything he could to give it away early. I mean, he was awful in the first half, but came back and more or less won the game for them.
Don, Kenny Hill gave us the performance that we talked about last week in previewing the
Yep,
game. He
that's
gave
exactly right.
Hill in the first half of the mistakes that he's prone to make. In this game, he made them early enough that they could compensate for them. At other
That's
times,
exactly right.
in TCU losses, he's made them in critical times and made them when you would expect. Possibly in this one, it would have been when they were down by a couple points and needed to score that field goal on the last drive. But he made the plays with his feet, and not just in his feet, in extending plays and breaking contain and running for first downs and running for big yardage, but extending the plays, then making the throws.
Yeah, he completed what, 8-9 in a row at one point in the third and fourth quarter. That's what you got to do, particularly when you're playing uphill from behind. He made the plays and got it done. The two things that were just devastating for Stanford, that 93-yard touchdown pass where that kid Rager just ran right by the flat-footed Stanford DB. I mean, ran right by him. And then the punt return, where cannon leg Jake Bailey launches a 60-yard punt, but then the return team gives up a 76-yard touchdown punt return to White, the kid who had the touchdown pass, the touchdown reception, and the punt return touchdown. He's my MVP, probably even ahead of Hill, given how poorly Hill played early in the game. I think he benefited from people forgetting by the time the game ended how awful he looked in the first and second quarters. But it's hard. It's definitely not the way anybody wanted to see the season end. Who's rooting for the Cardinal and White. But every once in a while, I feel like you got to tip your hat to the opposition. I thought TCU was gritty, gutty. They never stopped fighting, clawing. Their coaches made better adjustment than Shaw and his staff made at halftime. So that was obvious. And I think most critically, when it mattered the most, Kenny Hill outplayed KJ Costello. I thought going in that was going to be the key to the game, and I think that's exactly how it worked out.
So when you talk about adjustments, Don, the Stanford defense was obviously gassed. Much of
Yes.
that had to do with TCU playmakers in space. They looked like the much more athletic, the faster team, especially in the second half.
Yes.
Is there anything that they could have done, though, to compensate for that? Because their offense made some drives, but basically hit on a couple big plays themselves. And so they scored and got off the field. And when they weren't moving the ball, it was 3 and out. So the defense was really hung out to dry.
That's exactly the point. I think TCU and Patterson is known for his defensive, X and O mastery, and he and his defensive staff made great adjustments at halftime and stymied Stanford's offense. And it was, but you scored 28 in the first half, and you can only muster 9 in the second half. It's not a recipe to win a football game against a really talented team that's clearly one of the 15 best in the nation. You got to be able to keep your foot on the pedal and keep it going, and they couldn't. Love had to leave with that thumb injury, which, by the way, looked kind of gnarly. Probably not any long-term kind of thing, but clearly he couldn't get back on the field for that one series, which inhibits what you can do. And frankly, probably hurts Costello. Because you have to at least respect Love's ability to break one if he's out there. But he couldn't get back in for that final offensive series, and that hurt as well. But you play with the guys you got, and it doesn't come down to that if the offense doesn't sputter so badly throughout the second half.
So on the drive in which Stanford took the final lead of the game for the Cardinal, and then completed the touchdown, didn't get the 2-point play to Caden Smith, but they seemed to go to the couple different routes outside of the obvious, being Bryce Love, in the passing game where they had a bit of an advantage. One being Cameron Scarlett, who doesn't catch a whole lot of passes, period, but they got him out of the backfield, and he was a bit of a mismatch, a guy that they could use TCU-like in space. And then also, obviously, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who's a tremendous threat, and I don't know how he caught that touchdown pass. He
does that all year. And he's done that all year. He's done that throughout his career. Arcega-Whiteside has something like 42 career receptions, give or take. Don't quote me, but I think that's the number. 14 of them are touchdowns. 14. That's one out of every 3 passes he's caught has been a TD in his career. He's a touchdown machine, and it was interference on that. He's done that again and again. He's been interfered with, and he just catches it anyway. So he's got a knack for that, or a gift. He's really good on the jump ball situations. And frankly, he's pretty talented. In general as a wide receiver, he's a really good football player. So can't really hate on him. Can't hate on Love. Despite continuing to be a little hobbled, plus the thumb injury, still does absolutely amazing stuff. 69-yard touchdown run. Are you kidding me? On an ankle that's maybe 85% at this point. You can't convince me it's 100. But it's just he's been remarkable, and you run out of superlatives to throw at him. I thought Costello was great early. I thought the going in game plan was solid for the Card on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. But TCU made better adjustments on offense and on defense, and won the game going away. Still close, but they look by far like the better team in the second half of the contest.
Yeah, it was a 33-10 run at one point, and then Stanford scores the touchdown to go ahead. They give up the field goal, and then they get the ball back one more time. And despite being outplayed for the better part of 30 minutes, it looked like Stanford would need just the short field to put a decent field goal kicker and Jet Toner in range, but Costello makes the bad play on the pass down the middle, and that's after consecutive penalties that put them at a bad spot on 1st and 20, and it was not to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he's made that play in an affirmative sense, going down the stretch in the season. We've seen him complete those middle passes to Smith in critical situations, or to Arcega-Whiteside on the outside, or Colby Parkinson from time to time. He's made that play. He just did not make it tonight. Probably didn't read it right. And another thing that shouldn't go unmentioned, Stanford kicked a field goal in the third quarter, to kind of keep pace a little bit, before that TCU score to go up by 4 or 5 prior to Stanford's final touchdown. And Costello missed a wide open Parkinson on the right side of the end zone. He was fixated on Smith across the middle. He was double teamed. You could have completed that pass. It wasn't far from being complete. But Parkinson was, there was nobody within a zip code of him. He was wide open, and he just missed it. And it happens.
That was, definitely a big play right there. When they needed, you felt at that point, with the way TCU was making plays on offense, that anytime Stanford came down and kicked a field goal, that was a losing proposition. They got the one fumble against TCU, and didn't convert that into anything from what I remember.
Yep, also true. So, Stanford early in the game in particular, time of possession, check, turnover margin, check. Really good on third down on defense in the first half. And then utterly unable to stop them in the second half, missing Justin Reed and with an absolutely gassed D line and linebacking core.
I'm going to mention two players before I spin it forward to ask you about 2018. Bobby Okereke finishes his Stanford career with a tremendous game. He made some really good plays in space against tough guys to tackle on that TCU offense. And Ennis Gaines, he's a sophomore safety, number 6 for TCU. I was watching him all night. This kid looked like he should have been Desmond White or somebody else on offense. That's about how big he looks. And this safety was just breaking up plays. He was moving
everywhere.
piles. He was a disruptor in the backfield. He was amazing.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And particularly, again, in the second half, they deployed him incredibly effectively, and he was very disruptive out there on the field. One note about Okereke, he's actually a redshirt junior, probably lists as a senior according to the way Stanford designates. He's expected to return next season and is likely to be one of the captains, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So Callum Baye is a redshirt senior, so he's exhausted his eligibility and will probably attempt to go on and continue to play at the next level. Okereke should be back. And boy, did he have a big game tonight. Other than dropping that interception in the end zone, he played really well as well.
Hey, Don, I don't think I'm going too much off of this game, but I think I'm going off the 5 or 6 Stanford games that I saw this year. Of course, Bryce Love is making a lot of this yardage on his own, and a lot of it is just huge yardage. It's you break the first level, and he's just so fast and so talented, and he makes one guy miss, and then he's gone, and nobody can catch him. It's not a whole lot of 8 and 12 and 6 and 8. It's a lot of 1 and 2 and -1 and 3 and then 50 and
69, etc. Yeah, it's just gone.
Exactly. So that draws me to the offensive line. So my thoughts going ahead to 2018, and certainly placing it in your hands as the expert, is the offensive line doesn't look as good as it was 5 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, when the Rose Bowls were being won and the team was finishing in the top 5 in the nation. That would seem to be, to me, the difference, the major difference between those teams and the last couple of years.
Yeah, I don't buy that. I think they're younger. Next year's offensive line is going to be fantastic. So the left guard, David Bright, graduates. His eligibility has been exhausted. Expect to see Nick Wilson, who's been the ogre, tight end, fullback, etc. Expect to see him start at left guard next year. Walker Sorrell played tonight, which was great to see. Co-offensive player of the year in the Pac-12, freshman of the year in the Pac-12 conference. He's back next year. Foster Sorrell got a few snaps in, played in the jumbo packages occasionally. He's back next year at tackle. Incredibly talented kid. Devery Hamilton played very well at left tackle, filling in for Walker Little while he was injured. So I actually think next year's offensive line is going to be really, really talented, and they're going to be a year older and a year smarter and a year stronger. I have very few concerns about the offensive line next year, very few concerns about quarterback. I think Costello will be better and got some valuable experience. I think he's going to be solid. I do expect Bryce Love to choose to come out, although knowing his profile, if there were ever a running back who might say, I didn't like how that finished, I might come back, he might, go ahead and finish his HumBio degree and in 4 years. He may come back. We'll have to see how that goes. I think I've mentioned this to you before. Connor Weddington had some great plays this evening, converting a couple of third downs from the slot receiver position. If Love leaves, do not be surprised to see Weddington return to running back. You got guys like Spates and Scarlett who will still be back, who are still incredibly talented. And watching Cameron Scarlett out of the backfield tonight, that one play, that 50-yarder, he looked an awful lot like a guy who wore number 5 last season and the year before. I mean, that was a pretty good play, and that wheel route was also an inspired call that I think broke a tendency that TCU just hadn't seen in its film prep. So I think the offense looks good. I think the challenges are going to be on the other side of the ball, especially if Justin Reed comes out, and if Elijah Holder, coming off that ACL, chooses to enter the draft and rehab and go play on Sundays as well. I think it's going to be harder on defense than it's going to be on offense.
The 2018 schedule for Stanford out of conference looks very familiar. You've got San Diego State, this time at home to open up the campaign, a game against UC Davis, and then Notre Dame a little bit earlier than typically on the schedule, September 25th, traveling on the road to South Bend. And the Pac-12 not doing a whole lot of favors in regards to who you miss in the Pac-12 South Division. It's Colorado and Arizona.
Yep. Yeah, it's the typical even year schedule, which has been the bane of Stanford's existence for the last several seasons now. It's a little more favorable with 2 out of conference home games, which is great. But it flips the other way in conference. And as you know, if you really want to make noise, you probably need to not lose more than 1 game, according to what we've seen the College Football Playoff Committee do. And it helps you tremendously to win your conference, and it's a lot harder with this schedule set up for Stanford in 2018 versus the odd number year.
And you do have the bye week in the middle of the season, just prior to a difficult 3-game stretch at Arizona State, then Washington State and Washington.
Right.
So that could be at a good point for the team to rest up and get ready for those difficult Pac-12 North foes. All right, Don King from Last Word on College Football helping us break down a difficult one for the Cardinal, taking on TCU as the Horned Frogs come back from 21-3 down to wrestle it away 39-37 to finish up at 11-3, 9-5 for the Stanford Cardinal. All right, Don, we appreciate the time, the breakdown, and we certainly encourage everyone to check out Don, Mike Laval, Tony Siracusa, and the crew at Last Word on College Football, as they are all over the postseason, and of course with this early signing period, that as well. Don, we appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Mark.